This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. It's the Rich Dad Radio Show. Good news and bad news about money. We broadcast from beautiful Old Town Scottsdale, Arizona, where it's either heaven or hell, and right now it's bordering on hell. It's hot as hell. But anyway, as I say, it's a dry heat. Yeah. And we have a very, very special guest, kind of an old friend. Today, old friends are like 2 years old, but because it's changing so fast and friends change so fast today. And we were with Mark Moss, with our other old friend, George Gammon, at George's event in Miami, which for me was a transformational event. I mean, I completely changed my book, Capitalist Manifesto. So it was a magical event. Sarah was there, Kim and I were there, and all this. And it's really nice for me personally to be the old guy listening to young guys. And it's nice to see because the old guys are screwed. Any comments, Kim?
The young guys are smart, let me tell you that. At George's conference, Mark, I understood a lot of your presentation. There were some that were just so over my head with graphs and charts and talking 10 miles an hour. But it definitely brought up a ton of questions and a ton of what I don't know and what I need to know. So this is going to be fun. We have Mark in studio with us, which is great. We're going to talk about market cycles, which I don't know how you I'm here as a student today because I don't know how you figure out these market cycles today, but we're going to learn from Mark and from Robert, and I'll be the translator for if the jargon gets too complicated. I'll be the one that jumps in.
All right.
Now, as much as I really despise censorship by YouTube and all that, it does a lot of good. So I'll just say that before they censor us. So Mark, give us a little bit of your background, please, besides living in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, so I'm from Southern California, but I'm temporarily in Puerto Rico.
Inside joke.
Well, you got to explain why you're living in Puerto Rico, because guys like Schiff and Maloney and who else, Dent and all those guys live in Puerto Rico. But if you're like Trump and me, we're real estate investors. We don't pay taxes. So everybody moves to Puerto Rico to avoid taxes, but real estate investors don't pay taxes anyway. So that's part of capitalism. So that's why we're giving everybody who lives in Puerto Rico grief, because we have to give people grief. Otherwise, they don't know where they are. Okay, so
yeah, you called me out from stage, I think 3 times on that. So I called my tax guy as soon as I got home. I said, "Figure this out. We're making a switch."
Good way to look at it. Figure it out. How do you make a lot of money and pay no taxes? That's the rich dad way.
Exactly. So of course I have
legally
to
pay no taxes.
Legally, of course, yeah. So anyway, first, thanks for saying the smart guys are the young guys today, because I've learned so much from you. So I'm just picking it up and trying to carry the torch and try to make difficult subjects very easy to understand, so people have actionable information.
Perfect.
Well, I think I'd say that as the younger people are more aware of what I was talking about back in the 70s. There was something wrong. When Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard in 71, I knew something was going to radically get screwed. So, but nobody could understand it. And so my generation of boomers, we drank the Kool-Aid. Mm-hmm. All you needed was a 401k. And the 401k came out in 74, which I thought was interesting. Mm-hmm. And basically that was, you think homelessness is a big problem today. The next round of homeless would be baby boomers, because they'll run out of retirement money. And then the Fed will probably have to print more. So anyway, that's kind of my dismal forecast. But for people who are aware, you can prepare for it. So that's why I really, really enjoyed what you were saying on stage at George Gammon's event, because the younger guys are more aware than the old guys. Yeah. Would you say that? No?
Mm-hmm. I don't have a mic.
Okay.
So I won't be able to join in.
Okay. Anyway, so that's how I see it. So you guys are much more aware, where the old guys, like the boomers, are still on Fantasia land.
Yeah. So Mark, give us a little bit about your background. How did you get into all this?
Yeah. So I was a real estate investor. I was an entrepreneur, real estate investor, and had figured out how to make a lot of money. I did really well for myself from like 95 till 2005. Started buying bank repos out of the crash of 89 to 92. So 95, I was like 18 years old. Started buying bank repos. Your book really kind of expanded my mind and helped me think differently. Had a couple of businesses, Fortune 500 exits, $25 million in real estate development. But when 2008 came, I got hit really, really, really hard.
You didn't pay attention to the repo market. That's fine.
Yeah, and Mike Tyson says everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And I got more than punched in the face. I got knocked out, and so
a lot of people did, boy.
Yeah, a lot of people did, and it made me go, shoot, I'm pretty good at making money, but like I don't understand this whole financial casino thing going
Right,
on.
right.
And so then I realized it was a lack of my own education, and that's where I had to dig in. So that kind of changed everything for me, and I just spent all my time figuring this out. Being kind of competitive, I learned this key concept that money doesn't disappear. It's like energy. It doesn't disappear, it transfers. So when I lost my wealth, somebody got my wealth.
Correct.
And that didn't sit well with me.
It's like, me neither.
And I vowed to never let that happen again. And as a matter of fact, to be on the receiving end of wealth transfers. And so for 12 years, I've studied wealth transfers. About 6 years ago, I started writing a financial newsletter, making videos. And so I've kind of been an educator maybe now for the last 5-6 years. And so I'm on YouTube and a podcast. And so I think it's important to learn, to do it, and then teach it. And it's been really helpful for me.
Well, I love that the resilience. I mean, you lost a ton of money, and most people would go crying and I'm a victim and all of this,
Yeah.
but it was a great wake-up call, and you took advantage of it.
Well, I grew up in Southern California doing extreme sports. I grew up racing dirt bikes, and I've broke every bone in my body pretty much. I have metal in 4 of my limbs. And so I'm used to just kind of dusting myself off and doing it again. So maybe that helped me a little bit.
God almighty. Anyway, so what we're going to talk about today besides everything?
Well, I wanted to talk about 3 different angles, 3 different revolutionary cycles that we can see that are converging. And we look at them from different angles, from like a political structure, from a technological angle, and from a financial angle. And the reason why it's important to look at them from those 3 angles is because, like with financial indicators, like the repo market, just that indicator by itself isn't conclusive. We want to look at a bunch of indicators to see which way they point. But we also want to expand past financial. Let's look at the other areas, because solutions come to problems. Things are reactive, cycles are reactive. And so what happens in the political, social area pushes like technological, and then that drives financial. And so I think a lot of people are looking for financial answers. What comes next? Will the dollar remain the reserve currency? Will it be the yuan? Will it be an SDR? Will it be whatever? But they're looking at it from only a financial angle, and without understanding the technological side or the political side, they can't really get to the answer they're looking for.
And there's one more thing, is the media side.
Sure.
Because the media today is completely biased.
Definitely.
So that's the real danger today. So that's why we got to be careful what we say here at Rich Dad constantly. Because we just had Eric Trump here. They took us off. We said nothing political.
Really?
Just because the name Trump, they took us off. It's amazing. It's really amazing.
So what do you see with these 3 cycles, or these 3
Yeah,
indicators?
So if we start from like the political, social side of things, we can see that there's the world's in turmoil, right? The world's breaking apart. It's pretty easy to see that. And so there's kind of 2 cycles within that we look at. And so one, there's like an 84 like populist uprising or regime change cycle. So 84 years ago was World War II, and Hitler and Mussolini, and even FDR changed the United States with the New Deal kind of into like a socialist type nation. 84 years before that was Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto, not the Capitalist Manifesto, but the Communist Manifesto, which then led to the European Spring, which is the largest European revolution. 3 84-year cycles equals a 252-year cycle, which is a revolution cycle. So 250 years ago was the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the birth of democracy, capitalism, etc. 250 years before that was the Protestant Reformation.
Wow.
Jeez.
It's
What's
amazing.
Interesting.
and what's really important about those 2 things, those 250-year and 500-year cycles, is they were both representing rejecting globalism or centralization and moving to decentralization.
Oh, okay.
That's the key piece. So in the Protestant Reformation, the church, the Catholic Church, and the government were together, and there was only one way to God, right, through this central control. But the people, interesting point, 70 years earlier had gotten the printing press, they had gotten the Bible, they learned that I don't need a central control, I can go decentralized, now I can have an independent path. 250 years ago, same thing, rejecting the monarchy, rejecting the established government in Europe, and they created a decentralized government.
Okay, you're giving me hope here that we're 250 years and we're going to have
There's a lot of hope.
This rejecting of globalization.
This is a message of hope.
This is good.
It's a message of hope. And so 250 years ago, they rejected the centralization of the monarchy, and the United States was set up as a republic, which is a decentralized government. And so history is kind of littered with stories of governments getting too oppressive, being overthrown, freedom, become too oppressive and overthrown. And so there's these 250-year cycles. So right now, we're at a 84-year, and the 250-year is converging right now. Now, a couple key pieces that are really...
So is that 2020 or 20?
Yeah, so the weather has we have like summer, spring, winter, fall. But and even though maybe on the calendar we have the day that it changes to spring, but it doesn't mean the weather changes that exact
No, I know.
day.
So I just want to give people a reference point today where we're talking about, because a good thing about what we're doing today goes evergreen.
So 252 years from 1776. So we're right about now. All this is converged. It's all going to happen this decade.
I'll ask one more question because it's really popular. Is the fourth turning? How does that fit in the whole thing?
Yeah. So the fourth turning is 80-year cycles, and there's four.
Go ahead.
There's 4 20-year cycles within
Right.
that 80-year cycle, and that's another key piece that's in part of my research.
Correct.
And again, it's reactive. So they say that hard times bring strong men. Strong men bring great times. Great times bring weak men, and weak men bring bad times. But the bad times bring the strong men again. So it's like a cycle, and it's reactive. And we can see that today we have these bad times with weak men who are literally living off of the wealth that was created 2 generations before them. So academia and politics, these people have no reality because they've never produced. They're living off wealth of the past.
They've
and
never
so
produced.
It's also, I just wrote this in Capitalist Manifesto, which comes out soon. Mona, who is kind of my conscience when I'm writing, because I was writing what Marx said about women. It wasn't flattering. So she says, you better change that because you don't want to upset the women. So, okay, we change it. So the thing that Kim always said is 3 kinds of men in the world. Bad boys, nice guys, and wimps. So in Manifesto, I said, is Trump a bad boy, nice guy, and wimp? And is Biden a bad boy, nice guy, or wimp? And I think that's kind of what you're saying right now. We had a shift from the bad boy to either a nice guy or a wimp.
yeah.
But the generation, second generation, third generation wealth have never produced. And what we're seeing in the U.S. and around the world is there's no the production is diminished dramatically, and they just keep printing money.
Not just that, but they're making policy in academia, think tanks, but also through government. They're making policy that are not grounded in reality.
No.
So they've never produced, so they're making these laws like AOC. So I'm in Puerto Rico. Last week when I was there, 3 out of 4 days I got, to be with no power for 4 or 5 hours a day. That was pretty cool. And AOC was actually there giving a talk, and they want to shut down a coal plant that produces 20% of the island's electricity. 20%. And she says, we got reports that said this won't limit the amount, or won't impact the amount of electricity we have, and it won't raise rates. It's 20% of the power. Like, that's not reality, right? So they have no reality as to what
I want to say one thing. Rich Dad does his best not to be political or anything like this. We don't make recommendations. We don't say buy this, do that, or vote for this. But AOC is one of the characters popping up today in society. I mean, she claims to be a poor girl, but she wasn't a poor girl.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And she was a barista and all that, but she went to making from working on tips to $174 a year with a huge staff that cost millions of dollars.
$174,000, yeah.
$174,000 a year with a staff that costs the taxpayer money, and she's still claiming to be a poor girl from Puerto Rico.
Right.
I'm going, you got to be kidding me. Are people that stupid? They can't see what's going on? So I'm not against AOC. I just don't like the rhetoric.
Well, it's not reality, as you say, Mark. It's not
Yeah,
reality.
So we have like natural law, like gravity. Gravity is a natural law. With enough money and technology, we could suspend gravity temporarily, but we're always going to have to come back to that. And so another natural law is that you must sow before you reap. You must produce before you consume. That's a natural law. So we can get away with consuming without production for a while, but eventually we have to go back to producing first.
Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll hold it with Eric. We're talking to Mark Moss. He's, again, we've been an old friend for now 2 years. We've been, we cooperate on our YouTube things and share information and ideas that our schools will never teach us. Never. Just because things are changing. So when we come back, we'll be asking Mark what he sees coming with the convergence of our technology. What else?
And financial.
Financial.
And political and social.
And political and social. This is a big convergence. We'll be right back. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. You can listen to the Rich Dad Radio program anytime, anywhere on iTunes, Android, or YouTube, as long as they don't take us off. And all of our programs are archived at richdadradio.com. We archive them because we don't sell anything. We have no recommendations. We don't say who to vote for or what to buy, what to invest in. We were purely financial education or macro education. So go to richdadradio.com, listen to this program again, and you'll learn twice as much. But more importantly, share it with friends, family, and business associates. Because, and if you discuss it, you'll learn twice as much again, because unlike school, the more you cooperate, which is called cheating in school, the more you learn. So our guest today is Mark Moss. Any comments, Kim?
Yes. So, Mark, it's so great to have you here in studio. So, you're an investor, you're an entrepreneur, and is it a podcast? Market Disruptors is your podcast. So
That's correct.
Market Disruptors.
Highly recommend Market Disruptors. But this is a fascinating discussion, because what you do is you study the history of cycles.
Yep.
And it's actually a positive message you're coming out. So keep going with this cycles.
So it's a positive message. So I believe there's great hope on the other side of this. So setting this up again, so solutions come to problems. And so we look at the world is rejecting centralization, globalization, and they always reject that to go to decentralization. We can see that we're at peak globalization right now. Right. The WEF and the WHO and the IMF and et cetera, et cetera. So we can see that we're there, and we can see the world is rejecting that. We had pre-pandemic, there was 10 countries with 1 million people each marching, populist uprisings. If we look at some of the problems that we have, centralization is a problem. The money printer is a problem. Unlimited money supply. Censorship is a problem. Man is always the problem, because man always tries to corrupt these things. We have a problem where we used to be ruled by law, like the Constitution, but today we're ruled by men who constantly change the rules all the time. So those are the problems that we have, we need solutions for. And so what's interesting is at the same time as the world is rejecting globalization to go to decentralization, and we have those problems that need to be solved, we have a technological revolution that's happening right now. Now, these move in 50-year cycles. Every 50 years, we have a new technological revolution. I'll run you through the 5 of them. The Industrial Revolution. And these aren't just new technologies like an iPhone. These are things that change humanity. Brought people from the cottage industry to the factories and to the cities. Then we had the steam engine. So people had walked and used horse and manpower for eternity. Now we had steam engines. Then we had and steel. Steel allowed us to go from 2 stories to skyscrapers. Then we went to electricity. Obviously, that was very big for humanity. Then we went to oil and automobiles. People had walked for all of eternity, and now we had cars, pretty big. 1971, we had the age of the microprocessor, which allowed personal computers, and the age of information, internet, what we're doing today. 1971 plus 50 years puts us right here today, and we have another technological revolution. Not a technology, but a revolution that changes humanity. And what is it giving us? Decentralization. Exactly what the revolution is asking for.
Okay, so other thing too, 1971 was when the year Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard. Right. So 2021 is the 50th anniversary of fake money, the U.S. dollar.
Yep.
And so then crypto pops up.
So that's the decentralization.
That's the decentralization.
The cryptocurrencies.
So it's Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And the reason why it's Bitcoin and not cryptocurrencies is because when you understand the problems, the unlimited money supply, the changing governance, the centralization, we need something that answers that. So we need something that's decentralized that nobody can control. We need something that's censorship resistant that nobody can censor. We need something that has immutable law, not governance. So all those cryptocurrencies have a governance. We need immutable law. And so when you understand the problems and that we need a solution to that, out of the 8,000 or so cryptocurrencies, there's only one that fits that bill. But it's interesting that at the same time as we have this 250-year revolution cycle, rejecting centralization to go to decentralization, we have a technology revolution cycle at the same time bringing us exactly what we need.
Yeah, if I could add, for those who understand the macro, is that communism is central control of the economy.
Yes.
And America was a democracy. It was a republic.
A republic.
And now we're becoming a centralized, controlled economy. And that happened when Janet Yellen moved from the Fed into the Treasury. Mm-hmm. And then Biden stepped in. You know, good times create weak men. He's probably one of the weakest I've ever met or seen. So we're right there. I mean, this is the 50th anniversary of the U.S. dollar becoming fake money this year. August 15th of this year is the 50th anniversary.
So these cycles in the past have been revolutions. They've been uprisings. Is that what we see coming?
I think it's pretty evident we're already here.
Yeah.
Right. I think, like I said, there was 10 countries with 1 million people each marching. Just in the last 2 weeks in London, there was 1 million people marching.
Yeah.
Of course, the media doesn't tell you that. We can see all through South America. Chile it put a new constitution in. They've been taken over by communists. Argentina, all through Central South America is all regime change. So we can see it. It's happening. We're in it right now. We're in the middle of it.
And can I say one more thing as a U.S. Marine, is that we also are pulling out of Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing we did in Vietnam. And those Afghanis who supported us will be murdered.
Yeah.
And we don't report that. And that is a tragedy of our fake media. It's exactly as Trump said, fake news. They report what they think we should hear. Anyway, so keep going, Mark.
Yeah, so we're in it. And so a lot of people want to know, like, when is this going to happen? It's like, we're living through it. In 50 years, history books will be written about this period of time right here. Lenin said that there's decades where nothing seems to happen, and then there's days where decades happen. And so that's kind of the fourth turning. In this fourth turning is when all the change happens. So this decade, I believe that the end of this decade is going to look completely different. The age of the giant nation.
You mean 2030?
By 2030, which of course the WF has an agenda for us. By 2030, we'll own nothing and be happy.
The World Wrestling Federation?
I believe that history tells a different story.
Wait, what's the WF?
The World Economic Forum.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. I thought it was the WWF.
Come on, Klaus Schwab and friends over there.
They're saying 2030, everybody, you'll own nothing, but you'll be happy.
Yeah, you'll be happy. We live it. We own nothing. We share everything. We all live in a commune. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the commune. Back to what you said though, real quick about communism. So again, trying to make this super simple. I think people get lost in words. So socialism, fascism, communism, capitalism, whatever. I see two systems. One that's centrally planned, controlled,
right,
and one that's free, open, and competitive.
Right. It has to be that way.
And that's it. And so we get lost in all these words. What's the difference of fascism and socialism? Well, they're both centrally planned and controlled.
But that's why Trump says we are a nation of laws.
Right.
Don't break the laws, but we break every single law, and they put Trump in jail or they impeach him. There is some, and then Alan Weisselberg, who is Trump's CFO, is a friend of Kim and mine. They put him on the perp walk. Do you know what I mean? He didn't do anything wrong, but our fake press puts Alan in the news as this criminal, and he didn't do anything wrong. I read what he did. Every corporate guy does the same thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's why what you're talking about is so crucial. Is 50 years. What were the other dates or times and cycles?
Well, so those are the 50-year technological cycles, technological revolutions. Okay. Now, each one of those creates new economies. So, like, Uber was cool, but that just kind of extended the existing economy. But technological revolutions create new economies. So the age of the information, computers, and internet created all new economies that weren't there. And so that's kind of where we're looking at. So then we look at the financial side. So this kind of brings us back to what we typically talk about, financial. And we can see the financial system is actually being reset right now. So about every 80 years, there's like this, Ray Dalio talks about like this 80-year credit cycle. And so you have the rise of credit, which things grow up really fast, but then credit also works the opposite way and it's very deflationary. And so we can see that 80 years ago was the whole world got a new financial system, the Bretton Woods Agreement. So the whole world changed to a
1944.
1944. And today the IMF is calling for a Bretton Woods II moment, right? We can see that the financial system is ready to be reset. We were talking about reverse repos before we went on. The financial system is cracking apart. We don't know how much longer it can go. But not only do we not know how much longer it can go, but they're actively calling for a new system. And
they have to.
They have to. But so people are like, well, will the dollar remain? Or will it be the digital yuan? Or will it be the IMF creates an SDR basket? What will it be? Will we go back to gold? And I think they're all asking the wrong question because they haven't looked at the other two revolutions that are there.
Okay, what are those?
Well, so they're looking for a centralized answer.
Ah, okay.
They're looking for a centralized answer from the powers on high to say this is the new system, but the future is decentralized, not centralized.
All right.
So the future is decentralized where Bitcoin is my reserve asset. It could be your reserve asset. We know a lot of S&P 500 companies are now using it as a reserve asset.
Well, was it El Salvador and Guatemala just shifted?
Now we have countries making it a reserve asset. So it's a decentralized movement where I choose what's best for me. You choose what's best for you. Good luck. Place your bets accordingly. Mm-hmm. And we're already starting to see that. So I don't think, everyone's looking for that answer, that central answer. That's not what the history tells us the future holds for us.
And so one is the decentralized. You said there were two things they're not looking at.
Well, they're not looking at the political, social, cultural side of things, right? Which tells us that we're rejecting globalization to go to decentralization. And they're not looking at the technological piece that creates new economies, which is the decentralized technology. So they're only looking at the financial system, looking for a centralized answer, but they don't realize politically, socially, culturally, we're rejecting centralization to go to decentralization. They don't realize that technologically, we have a new revolution that creates financial markets. See, if they're only looking at the financial piece.
Right.
And so I think those two things tell us that it's not a central answer from the IMF or whoever.
Do you think they don't see it or they don't want to acknowledge it?
I think
both.
Both. I mean, they want to keep the status quo. They want to keep their power as long as they can. But human freedom always wins. History tells us that, right? We have this natural drive to freedom, and history is littered with examples of human freedom always winning. If the people don't want something to be illegal or wrong, it won't be. And I know
that's very optimistic.
I like that.
Well, Robert, I mean,
that.
this lines up with your message. I mean, I hear people all the time, oh, the government's not going to allow that. They're going to make it illegal. And I'm like, what? You're just giving up? You're a sheep like that? If a billion people don't want it to be illegal, it won't be.
No, but you said it earlier, is that we're shifting to fascism.
Right.
You know, we went from democracy, socialism, communism, fascism. And fascism is they'll tell you what to think, what to do, and how to act. And unfortunately, that's what I see coming is, the rise of Hitler again, some kind of Hitler. But
there's hope there. There's hope there, though. So,
the question is, what's the body count?
Well,
that's the thing. And see, understand, I'm a Marine, and the body count is going to be extremely high. Communists and socialists and fascists have murdered more people in history than democracies.
Sure, hundreds of millions.
Yep.
I think the future, though, is the revolution in the future is not over guns. It's over information and money.
I understand, but when you have homelessness going through the roof, and you have old guys, the baby boomers who have been counting on this bogus 401k sold them by these communist, crooked financial planners. Mm-hmm. I'm saying talk about centralized planning. They're called financial planners.
Yeah.
And I've caught hell for years by saying I wouldn't touch that stuff. And the trouble is financial planners are just as stupid as everybody else because they don't know the bigger picture.
They're sales reps.
Yes. They work for Wall Street and the Treasury and the central bank. So that's what, so I don't, you can sit optimistically, but I ordered Kim a new shotgun that's a little bit more tactical. It comes down to how fast can you shoot and how much load do you have in your cartridge. I hate to be that pessimistic, but I'd rather be pessimistic with the option of being optimistic. So when we come back, we'll be talking more to Mark Moss because I am the Grinch that stole I don't know what, but I've been singing this song for so long. I think it's good that you're clarifying what's happened so people can make choices.
Yes, and I also want to say when we come back, I want to talk about, you'd say, people are just laying down and playing and quitting. What do we need to do? What do we need to do?
Yeah, I want you. We can go look at your new shotgun.
I'd like to hear Mark's answer. Thank you very much.
I have the Marine Corps answer. Shoot them when they come in the house. That's the best thing you can do. So we come back. We'll be talking more about Mark Moss. We're going to go on an extra session because this information is so vital, timely. And again, at Rich Dad, we make no recommendations. We don't say do this or do that. We want you to think for yourself. And as I said, the great thing about the younger generation, they're much more aware than the old guys like me. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. Today our guest is, it's a fascinating subject, Mark Moss. And like most capitalists, we get our butts kicked, and those are the best thing that can happen to you is get your butt kicked when you're young.
Yeah.
And then you can recover, because Kim and I have had our butts kicked so many times. And unfortunately, the academic system says the way you get rich is you don't make mistakes. And you memorize the answer. Some idiot gave you the answer to memorize. Mm-hmm. And that's called academics. And we wonder why we're in trouble today. So Mark is going to continue on for the third segment on what the cycles are. Comments, Kim?
Yes. So the cycles and the history of the cycles. So you interviewed Jim Rogers recently, and he said one thing that history has proven is that people, mainly our politicians and academia, do not learn from history. So what's fascinating about this is you're giving us the history, and we are learning from you the history of economics and the cycles and the markets. So continue on.
Well, it's more than just money. It's a convergence of different technologies coming together today, which is why we've been saying for years, gold, silver, Bitcoin, because that's still solid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Comments, Mark.
So when you understand these things are reactive, right? So solutions come to problems. So the financial system needs to be reset. That's a problem. But we can look back to the technology side that drives financial cycles, technological revolutions. But then technological revolutions are solutions to problems that happen politically and socially and culturally. And so that's kind of how we trace that down. Now, to the point you were kind of making before we took a break, the body count. I believe all this change happens over the next decade, and it's not going to be smooth. It's not. And so the way I look at it is the work I'm doing, the work you're doing, it's like everybody's on the Titanic and it hit the iceberg and it's going down. And the more people we can offload onto lifeboats, the less of an impact that ship going down will be. And so that's kind of what I'm trying to do. Let's get people onto as many lifeboats as we can.
Again, Mark is drinking from the Kool-Aid cup here, and I'm going. That's why we have the Rich Dad Radio Show. I mean, think about cycles. This is August 15th, 1971. Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, and prior to that was 1944, the Bretton Woods. They don't teach that in school. So this is the 50th anniversary. This August 15th, 2021, is the 50th anniversary of fake money. And that 50 years ago, it changed the world. I mean, they stopped teaching about gold in school. And ever since then, I've been buying gold, and then for the younger generation, it's Bitcoin.
Yes, and so you talk about the younger generation. We were talking about this at the break. We see more and more people, you mentioned people are just laying down and playing dead and quitting. But we're seeing, our job, your job is to get people aware and wake them up to what's really happening. And you're also saying that it's the younger people that are getting more aware faster than the older generations.
So I like to say on my channel, I'm not here to wake up the sleeping sheep.
Yeah.
I want to wake up the sleeping lions. That's who we really want to wake up. And I would say that while I do get discouraged by seeing the lack of attention by so many people today who are just reading headlines and don't really understand what's going on, I'm also really encouraged by the amount of people that are waking up. And I believe that the internet has created transparency where the government and the organizations aren't really able to hide this stuff anymore. And I mean, you've been educating for a long time, Robert, and I mean, nobody used the word fiat before, and now everybody uses that word and knows what that word is. And so I think that there's maybe half the people have fallen deeper asleep, but there's a whole half of people that are waking up to this, and they don't want to stand for this anymore.
I don't think people even understood centralized government versus decentralized. Right. I don't think so.
Or democracy and republican versus Kremlin.
And remember, solutions come to problems, and so we can see that the government has gotten more aggressive, more central,
more fascist,
more authoritarian, or whatever you want to call that, and that causes people to want to rebel against that and go back to freedom. So, 30, 40 years ago, people didn't need it as bad, but today, everybody's actively looking for that solution.
So what can people do? What do we need people to do?
Well, I mean, the things that we can do, one, understanding that this next decade is probably going to be rough. The transition won't be smooth. I believe there's great hope on the other side, but how do we survive that? So a couple things.
Well, Mark, I would say hope is for the hopeless. It's called intention,
sure,
responsibility, action, discipline, the words of the Marine Corps. Mm-hmm. Hope is for those communists out there who went to school and they're now school teachers. They're the worst people on planet Earth because I grew up with them. Mm-hmm. They sit there, the government will solve this problem. That's hope. That's hopeless for hopeless people.
Well, the key word you said there was responsibility.
Yes.
And so...
the word response is your ability to respond. Mm-hmm. And so the question we're kind of asking you, how do we respond?
Yeah, so by taking responsibility, knowing that the government isn't going to save you and that Social Security is not going to be there for you. And so it's kind of up to you. And so increasing your education, obviously, is kind of the first part.
So one of the responses, stay educated, stay abreast.
Definitely.
Okay.
The world's going to change super fast, and we don't know exactly every turn that it's going to make, and so we want to make sure we're paying attention.
Are you specifically recommending Bitcoin?
Of course.
Why is that?
Yeah, so I'm specifically recommending Bitcoin because I believe that we have problems that the money printer sits at the base of every problem that we have in society today.
Okay, once again, Rich Dad does not recommend it, but Kim and I do own quite a bit of Bitcoin, but we bought it at a very low price because that's the difference.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're not recommending. We're just saying we already buy off on that program.
Yeah. So I think if you understand the problems and the money printer sits at the base of every problem, and that if we don't separate money and state, None of this will ever be fixed.
What does that mean, money in states?
So right now,
centralized.
They control the money printer. And so the lockdowns, for example, would have never happened if they couldn't send people stimmy. And this whole vaccine program would have never happened if they didn't have all this money. But where did they get the money from? The whole Afghan thing that we just started out talking about, how would that war have ever started if they didn't have a money printer? The money printer creates this wealth inequality and this, we can look at the divorce rate, we can look at the incarceration rate, and it all stems from the homelessness problem, all stems from that money printer. And so we have to get rid of that. This ever-changing law governance, we have to change that, right? We need a rule of law, immutable law. And we need to be self-sovereign where I can store my wealth in a way that can't be seized or stolen or inflated away. Inflation is theft. And if I want to send it to you, nobody can stop it, block it, or prevent it. That's true freedom. That's true censorship resistance. And so we need a solution to that. And there's only one. There's only one. And so we need to be able to keep our wealth.
What's that solution?
Bitcoin.
That's pretty pessimistic.
So as I said in my talk, if not Bitcoin, then what? And so a lot of people want to say, well, Bitcoin has this problem, that problem. Okay, great. Well, what's your solution? Because there's no other solution.
How about not needing money?
Well,
so I don't have to live in Puerto Rico. You understand? I think differently. So we don't need money. And that's what Rich Dad teaches.
Yeah. Well,
you see, because money can be made anytime you want. The denomination may change.
Which is my second part of my advice that you're asking for advice is you need to figure out how to make money. And what I recommend is that you learn high value skills. Those are typically around sales and marketing, and they should be something that you can do from anywhere, preferably like something that can be done over the internet, because you may need to move jurisdictions. Maybe not Puerto Rico, but you may need to be able to move jurisdictions. And so increase my income. A lot of people don't focus on that. They think about investing, but they need to focus on creating more wealth. And so learn high value skills, sales, marketing skills, things that can be done anywhere, because you may need to move around to increase your freedom as this transition happens. And then also I think there's a small shift in your thinking where instead of thinking about things in US dollar terms all the time and trying to increase my dollars because dollars are losing value really quick, it's increasing my purchasing power. And it's just a little shift. But if you can think about increasing your purchasing power, how do I protect my purchasing power as the system crashes around me so that then I can use this kind of sell of a lifetime on the back end of that?
So Kim and I hold a lot of gold, silver, Bitcoin, and bullets. Mm-hmm. And the reason we have bullets is because soon they're going to be able to trace them. And when you can't trace a bullet, its value goes up. As Chris Rock said, someday I'm going to shoot you when I can afford the bullet.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so what they're attempting to do is not only inflate prices, but put tracking devices in anything of value.
Look how volatile the price of bullets have been.
I know. That's what I'm saying.
Before the pandemic, they're 9 millimeters, 30 cents a round. It went up to $1 a round. Today, it's back down to about 50 cents a round. So even that's volatile. But yeah, stockpile that. It would be definitely.
No, but I don't hear what I said. You want untraceable bullets.
Sure.
And what you're talking about with gold and silver and Bitcoin, they've got to be untraceable. Because right now they're coming out with gold that's traceable. So if you understand that, you'll understand the world of information and invisible. So you want stuff that cannot trace.
Mm-hmm.
Is Bitcoin always untraceable? Because now governments are taxing it. They're taxing if you use it. If you purchase something, they're taxing it. Does that take away some of the...
So Bitcoin is an open network that's anonymous but not private. And so what that means is it's anonymous, so you can see all the addresses, but you don't know who they belong to. It's not private where you can't see it. Where they get you is the fiat on and off ramps. So when I buy it with my fiat, they have to get my KYC, know your customer, so they get all my info. And then if I sell it back for fiat, again, they know my customer. And then using AI software, they can somehow tie all that back together. But if I stayed only in Bitcoin and never went in or out of fiat, like in El Salvador, for example, now I'm giving people a way to earn money in Bitcoin. So they're getting money, earning it in Bitcoin anonymously, and they're spending it anonymously, and nobody will ever know who that is because there was never any KYC attached to that.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
that's a very, very big point, because of gold and silver, when we don't have stocks, I don't trust the stock market at all, because Kim and I have created a gold mine and a silver mine, and it's so manipulated, it's horrifying. But anyway, the key is that Kim and I have gold and silver stored outside this country, so that it's not traceable. Once I spend it, I can go anywhere in the world. I can be in Guatemala and give them a gold eagle. They'll take it. as long as it's not traceable.
And that's where it goes into diversifying your
Correct.
around the world.
But the
which
point
is,
here is just don't think there's only one answer. That's what I get.
Definitely.
That's when I go a little psycho on people.
No, I agree. And I own a lot of assets, gold as well, and real estate as well. But I'm afraid of having all my real estate in the United States because
they can tax it.
we've seen that. Well, not only taxing, but they've rent moratoriums, eviction moratoriums. Rashida Tlaib, they're talking about making it where you can't even collect rent anymore. And so there's risk to being all in one geography.
Yeah.
So now I just bought a piece of property in Mexico, and we're diversifying that. So not having your Simon Black would say you wouldn't have all your money in one stock. Why do you have your whole life in one country? And so that kind of goes back to where I was saying, learn skills that could be done anywhere in the world.
Right. That's decentralizing.
Decentralizing.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the best message you're putting out there. Mark, I really appreciate what you're saying. Our job is to get people to think. And like we have Spencer who came to our company. His father is my cardiologist. He says, would you mind taking Spencer under your wing? So I said, so what do you hear, Spencer? He's 20 years old. He says, my mom says to get a 401k. I said, you've come to the wrong company. But that's why it's brainwashing.
Yeah.
My generation are so brainwashed. You should get a job, have a 401k, and live happily ever after. I don't think that's going to happen. Again, 71 is when the dollar went off the gold standard. 74 was when the 401k came up. Do you smell a rat there?
Well, we know it doesn't work because half the baby boomers today have no savings. The other half that do, the average is about 100 grand. So we know it didn't work, and we know it won't ever work because you don't want to live off savings. You want to live off cash flow.
Correct. But they're eating principle all the time.
Right.
I think, the good thing is school's doing a good job because I was driving down the street and there was this guy standing. I hate to say it, he was pretty pathetic looking. He had this goofy hat on, standing in the Arizona heat. And it says, if you can read, he says, if you can read, I need $50 badly. I said, well, I can read, but I'm not going to give you $50. At least the Americans can read. God bless us. They don't know anything else, but they can read. Thank you for going to school. Any comments, Kim?
No, this is just fascinating. So, in terms of, I like what you're saying. You got to get educated, get Bitcoin, follow
But
the rules,
it's a
and make money.
decentralized attitude.
Yes. And I remember what Simon Black said once also when he was talking about looking for where you want to, be. Look for the country that wants you there, that welcomes you, that is friendly.
Yeah.
Go to places that are friendly to you. And the U.S. right now, unfortunately, the government is seeing its citizens as its enemy.
Yeah.
That's my concern.
And I get asked all the time, like, where would we go? What countries? And I say, start traveling now because you want to have that plan in place before you need it. So start. You go figure that out for yourself. Go visit those places now.
Good. Yeah, that's where I went down to the, what's it called? The nomad capitalist thing in Mexico. That was fascinating. I mean, these guys, you pay them $25,000 and they'll do that search for you. Now, if you don't have $25,000, it's going to cost you $25,000 to travel to Montenegro anyway. You know what I mean? So if you don't have money, it's because you went to school, because you're taught to be a socialist, Marxist, and a fascist, because that's what school systems teach. And that's why all these years, Kim's had to listen to me just berate teachers, and it does no good because they're idiots. They drank the Kool-Aid. If all you have to do is sit in a classroom and repeat what the teacher tells you, you'll be smart. And then Kim and I were just at, George Gammon's singing this lovely little Chinese girl who walks out, probably an A student. She says, what should I invest in? Real estate or stocks? And I lost it, Mark. I just frickin' lost it. What's it said? What do you think I am, your school teacher? Why don't you ask your stupid school teacher what to do? Why don't you think? Why don't you get on YouTube? Why don't you think? But our students are so conditioned to do as they're told. And that's what we're doing our best to break people away from. Any comments, Kim?
Yeah, well, according to you, Mark, so next 10 years are going to be, 10 years from now is going to be indistinguishable from today. 10 years is not going to be the easy road, but the positive takeaway I have is that people are there is going to be a revolution. And it's a revolution for freedom, not for
decentralization.
And even better, so history repeats this cycle over and over and over. I believe that we may be able to break that cycle. And so because man is the problem that always wants to continue to push that control, but if we have a system that man can't control, potentially we could break away from that cycle repeating.
I understand, but there will be violence. I look at everything from the Marine Corps side. Like, I really pray for those Afghans that supported us. They're going to be murdered. I saw that in Vietnam, and we don't report that. That's what's really tragic about our news. It's fake. Exactly as our friend Donald Trump said, it's fake.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that people like you with, market disruptors and Gammon and all that, we do our best to get through and just talk to people about what we think is going on. Not that we're right or wrong, but this is what we see going on.
I have one final question, because people ask us this all the time. Nobody I know these days is watching mainstream media, but where do you get your information? Do you have any sources that you would recommend people to start becoming more aware? Of course, your podcast, Market Disruptors, Rebel Capitalist, George Gammon.
Yep.
This podcast here, Rich Dad Radio.
It's definitely alternative news sources for sure. So it's definitely not CNN and MSNBC for sure. Although if you learn to read between the lines and be able to discern information, there is stuff that you can get from there. But typically it's other podcasts, it's other financial newsletters, reports, other people, decentralized news sources
Just
that are
search.
doing real research.
Right.
Yeah, real research is the key. Yeah.
The web is fantastic. I don't believe everything on the web, but it's fantastic from different points of view.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I suggest people do, is look for a different point of view. If I say I wouldn't have a 401k, or like I said to you, I don't pay taxes, the question, how would you do that? If you didn't have a 401k, what would you do?
Yeah.
But if you want to be the teacher's pet, raise your hand. Oh, tell me what to do, teacher. You're listening to a communist, Marxist, and a fascist. That's really the big problem there.
Yeah.
And they're good people. Anyway, I want to thank you, Mark. Thank everybody for listening to it. Trust we've disturbed you all. Have your friends listen to this and discuss it. You'll be even more disturbed because they all want to be told what to do. So, Sarah, final comments from you.
Final comments. Of course, Mark, thank you so much for joining us in studio and being flexible and showing up. But, I wrote down your the 4 steps or solutions that you came to, but it's really, the biggest thing I took away was a decentralized mindset or decentralized attitude. And I think that's what all of us can kind of take away from this. And we've always talked about changing your mindset, but I really liked that decentralized attitude.
But it's also keep an open mind.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Like tonight, we're joining Mark and George Gammon at dinner, and we're going to talk about something exciting like repo and reverse repo. And in 2008, when the repo market crashed, this is what's really sad about the press. It was really the failure of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and all the banking system, but they blamed it on the subprime borrower. They said the reason this market crashed was because of the poor people. And the average poor person believed it. Mm-hmm. But it was really the centralized banking system that crashed. That was in 2008, and the market crashed again just recently. The repo market's now reverse repo. And so everybody's rushing into stocks, bonds, real estate, and all this. And what reverse repo means, it means the money is running out of the banking system. So what does that mean? We'll discuss that tonight.
Great.
Final words, Sarah?
Just thanks again. Awesome show. And look forward to our discussion tonight.
And keep learning, everybody. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thôi mong chờ vậy sao bật khóc trong ngu ngơ vẫn thế đây bao lâu nay em không hay chỉ một mình anh ngồi khóc nước mắt đây riêng nơi đây em không hay sự thật là anh nhớ em người giờ đã xa lời hẹn ước đâu rồi nước mắt đây rơi biết bao lâu thì khô vẫn thế đây bao đêm say em không hay từng giọt buồn sao mặn đắng nhưng lúc đây anh loay hoay trong cơn say lại nhầm rằng em ở đây người giờ đổi thay tình mình vẫn đong đầy thế mới biết anh vẫn yêu em thì sao tìm quên chốn xưa ngày ta quen.